Hey there, story lovers. Welcome back to Cheating Wives Among Us. If you're new here, this is the place where we spill the tea on stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and jaw-dropping twists you won't see coming. So settle in, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into today's wild ride. The smell hit me first. That copper-sweet rot that never quite washes out of your nostrils, no matter how many times you've stood over a body. 15 years as a homicide detective, and I still hadn't gotten used to it. I hoped I never would. The warehouse in Pilsen had been abandoned for at least a decade, judging by the rust eating through the loading dock doors and the graffiti layered so thick you couldn't tell where one tag ended and another began. Morning light cut through the broken skylights in dusty shafts, illuminating the concrete floor where Megan Carver lay. 28 years old, blonde hair fanned out around her head like a halo, hands folded across her chest. Posed, I said, more to myself than anyone else. My partner Vince Callahan came up beside me, coffee cup in hand like we were at a Sunday brunch instead of staring at a strangled woman. 8 years we'd worked together. I knew his habits better than I knew my own. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think someone wanted us to find her exactly like this." I crouched down, studying the ligature marks on her throat. Deep, deliberate. This wasn't rage. This was presentation. Behind us, Dr. Nadia Foster's forensics team worked in their quiet, methodical way. Nadia herself was photographing the scene, her camera clicking in steady rhythm. "First responders say a homeless guy found her around 5 this morning," Vince said. He pulled out his phone, glanced at it, then slipped it back in his pocket. "Anonymous tip came in about 20 minutes before that. Someone wanted her found." I noticed he checked his phone again and again. His knee bounced slightly the way it did when he was anxious. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, fine. Just, the divorce stuff. Lawyers calling at all hours." He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Caroline's going for blood." I nodded. Vince and Caroline had been separated for 3 months. Nasty business. I'd bought him more than a few beers while he vented about it. "Why don't you take a breather?" I said. "I'll finish up here." "You sure?" "Go. Call your lawyer. I got this." He clapped me on the shoulder and walked toward the loading dock, already pulling out his phone. I watched him go, something uneasy stirring in my gut that I couldn't quite name. I turned back to the body. Something about the way her jacket lay caught my eye. A slight bulge in the lining that didn't match the natural fall of the fabric. I pulled on a latex glove and felt along the seam. A phone, tucked into a hidden pocket sewn into the jacket's interior. I should have called out to Nadia. Should have logged it immediately. Let forensics handle the chain of custody. That's what 15 years of training screamed at me to do. Instead, I palmed it. Old habit. Faster results. That's what I told myself. I stepped away from the body, angling my back to the rest of the team, and powered on the phone. No lock screen, she'd disabled it. The Messages app was already open, a conversation with a contact saved as RD. My initials. I scrolled through the messages, and the warehouse seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? I love the poster above your bed, the Bears one. Vintage, right? Photos, my bedroom, my bathroom mirror, the vintage Chicago Bears poster I'd bought at a flea market 12 years ago, the one Daniela always said was tacky but let me keep because it made me happy. More photos. A man's arm wrapped around a woman's bare shoulder. On the forearm, a Celtic knot tattoo. My tattoo. The one I got in the Marines when I was 22. But I'd never seen this woman before. Never been in this bed with her. Never sent these messages. I kept scrolling, my hands trembling. A selfie. The woman, Megan Carver, smiling at the camera, someone's chin just visible at the edge of the frame. The jaw was wrong, too narrow. Not mine, but everything else was. The setting, the details, the intimate knowledge of my life. Someone had been living my life, wearing my identity like a costume. And now that someone had killed her, and made sure I'd be the one to find her. The anonymous tip that led to the body, the phone hidden just carelessly enough for me to find. They wanted me on this case, wanted me to discover the evidence against myself and panic, make mistakes, incriminate myself trying to cover up crimes I never committed. I pocketed the phone, my first illegal act. I was playing right into their hands. But what choice did I have? Vince came back, still looking at his own phone. Anything, nothing useful, I heard myself say. Forensics can process the scene. Let's get back to the precinct. He nodded, and something in his expression, relief, satisfaction, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I drove home that night in a fog so thick I nearly missed my exit twice. The streets of Edison Park were quiet, the way they always were at 11 on a Monday night. Families tucked into their modest homes, living their modest lives. I'd chosen this neighborhood because it felt safe, normal, the kind of place where bad things didn't happen. What a joke! Daniela was in the kitchen when I walked in, still wearing her scrubs from Northwestern Memorial. She'd been an ER nurse for almost as long as we'd been married, 12 years this October. I remembered our wedding day, how she'd cried when she said her vows, how I'd believed every word she spoke. Long day, she asked without looking up from her phone. Aren't they all? She made a non-committal sound. We'd been doing this dance for months now. 2 people sharing a house, but barely sharing a life. I'd blamed her schedule, the stress of the ER, the way night shifts wore you down to the bone. Now I wondered what else I'd missed. I'm going to shower, she said, finally meeting my eyes. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Thanks. She walked past me, close enough that I caught her perfume, something floral and expensive that she'd started wearing about 6 months ago. Not her usual scent. I'd noticed but never asked. The moment I heard the bathroom door close and the water start running, I moved. Her purse was on the counter. I found her phone tucked into the inner pocket and held my breath as I tried her password. Our anniversary, the date we'd always used. Invalid. I tried her birthday. Invalid. My birthday. Invalid. The water was still running. I had maybe 5 more minutes. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and retreated to the living room, my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. She'd changed her password. After 12 years of using the same one, she'd changed it. When she came out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind her, I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch the news. I'm exhausted, she said, coming to bed. In a bit. I need to decompress. She paused, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something. An opening, maybe, a chance for honesty. But then she just nodded and disappeared down the hall. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I pulled out Megan Carver's phone and started cross-referencing. The messages were dated. Each one corresponded to a specific night over the past 8 months. February 14th, you made Valentine's special. February 14th, I'd worked a double shift, a gang shooting in Inglewood that kept me at the precinct until 3 a.m. March 22nd, I can still feel your hands on me, March 22nd, surveillance detail on the west side, 12 hours in an unmarked car with Vince. May 8th, the hotel room was perfect. Let's go back. May 8th, court testimony that ran late. Didn't get home until almost midnight. Every single date in that phone corresponded to a night I was working. Someone had known my schedule, down to the hour. 4 people had access to that information. Me, Captain Webb, my partner, and my wife. But Daniela had no connection to Megan Carver, at least none that I could see. She was an ER nurse, not a photographer. Their worlds didn't intersect. My partner, on the other hand, my partner who had a spare key to my house for emergencies. My partner who had been distracted and anxious at the crime scene. My partner who seemed relieved when I said I'd found nothing on the body. I ran Megan Carver's name through every database I could access from my home computer. Freelance photographer, event work, mostly, corporate galas, weddings, charity functions. Nothing that should have made her a target, but her financial records told a different story. For the past 8 months, she'd received deposits of exactly $5,000 on the first of every month. No employer name attached. The money came from a shell company registered in Delaware. Lakefront Holdings, LLC. I dug deeper. Lakefront Holdings had no employees, no physical address, just a P.O. box. A P.O. box registered to Raymond Dalton. My name, my identity, weaponized against me. I sat in the dark of my living room until dawn, started bleeding through the curtains, and I thought about all the ways a man's life could be dismantled, brick by brick, lie by lie, until there was nothing left but rubble. Captain Eleanor Webb ran the morning briefing with her usual efficiency. 52 years old, silver hair cut short, the kind of woman who'd clawed her way up through the ranks when being a woman in the CPD meant fighting twice as hard for half the respect. I'd always admired her, trusted her. Now I wasn't sure I trusted anyone. Carver case, she said, tapping the whiteboard where Megan's photo had been pinned. Dalton, Callahan, you're primary. I want updates every 12 hours. Yes, ma'am, Vince said. He was sitting 2 chairs down from me, looking well-rested and calm, not a trace of the anxiety from yesterday. I watched him throughout the briefing, the way he took notes, the way he volunteered to handle witness interviews, the way he carefully avoided meeting my eyes. Control the narrative, I thought. That's what you're doing. You want to be the one talking to witnesses so you can steer them. After the briefing, I caught up with him in the hallway. Hey, I've got some paperwork to catch up on, I said. You good handling the morning interviews solo? Yeah, no problem. His smile was easy, practiced. I'll text you if anything comes up. Great. I'll dig into her financials, see if there's a money trail. He nodded and headed for the elevator. I waited until the doors closed behind him, then went straight to my desk and picked up the phone. Tomas Reyes worked in tech crimes. A young guy, eager to prove himself, who owed me a favor after I'd helped him navigate a sticky situation with a confidential informant last year. The kind of favor that wasn't strictly by the book. The kind that meant he wouldn't ask too many questions. Tomas, it's Dalton. I need phone records. Whose? I hesitated. Crossing this line meant there was no going back. Vincent Callahan's. A pause. Your partner? Can you do it quietly? Another pause, longer this time. Give me a few hours. I owe you. Yeah, he said. You do. I hung up and spent the next 2 hours pretending to work while my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Vince's anxiety was exactly what he said it was. Divorce stress, lawyer calls, the usual misery of a marriage falling apart. Maybe the connection to my schedule was coincidental. Maybe someone else had access to that information. My computer chimed, email from Tomas. I opened the attachment and felt the floor drop out from under me. Vince had been in contact with Megan Carver. The messages themselves had been deleted, but the metadata was still there. Timestamps, durations, frequency. They'd been texting regularly for at least 6 months. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the cell tower data. Vince's phone had pinged near my house 17 times in the past 3 months. Always on nights when I was working, always, for 2 to 3 hours at a time. I closed the email and sat very still, breathing slowly through my nose the way I'd learned to do in the Marines when everything around me was going sideways. My partner had been in my home, with my wife, and now a woman who could connect them was dead. After shift, I went home and checked my safe. It was hidden in the basement behind a false panel, good enough to fool a casual thief, maybe not good enough to fool someone who knew exactly where to look. Everything was there: passport, birth certificate, social security card, the paper trail of my existence, all present and accounted for. But upstairs, in the filing cabinet where I kept copies of everything, I found empty folders. Someone had made duplicates of every document I owned. 3 people had been in this basement in the past year. Me, Daniela, and Vince once, when he helped me move some old furniture. I drove to Cicero that night and watched Vince pull into a storage facility off Cermak Road. He was inside for about 20 minutes, came out carrying nothing, and drove home to his apartment in Logan Square. I photographed the unit number and the facility name, then sat in my car in the dark, trying to decide what to do next. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Back off the Carver case or your career ends. Attached were photographs. A man who looked exactly like me, same build, same hair, same tattoo visible on his forearm, with 3 different women, in restaurants, in hotels, in what looked like my own bedroom. The last photo was with Megan Carver. The angle made it look like the man was grabbing her arm, pulling her close, aggressive, threatening. The man's face was mine, but the set of the jaw was wrong. The way he held himself was wrong. It was Vince, in a disguise so good it would fool anyone who didn't know exactly what to look for. I deleted the message and the photos, then stared at my phone's blank screen for a long time. They wanted me scared. They wanted me off balance. They wanted me to make a mistake. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Northwestern Memorial's ER was chaos at 11 in the morning, gurneys rolling, monitors beeping, nurses in scrubs weaving through the crowd with practiced efficiency. I found Gloria Mitchell at the nurses' station, entering data into a computer with one hand while answering the phone with the other. "Detective Dalton," she said when she saw me, her weathered face breaking into a smile. Gloria had been working the ER since before I joined the force. She'd helped patch me up after a suspect caught me with a lucky punch a few years back. "What brings you by? Here to surprise Daniela?" "Something like that. She around?" Gloria's smile faltered. "Honey, she's not working today. She switched to days 3 months ago. Didn't she tell you?" The fluorescent lights seemed too bright suddenly. The sounds too loud. "Right, I must have gotten my days mixed up. Happens to the best of us. You want me to tell her you stopped by?" "No, that's okay. I'll catch her at home." I drove to an electronics store in the suburbs where no one would recognize me and bought a GPS tracker. Small enough to fit in the wheel well of a car, good battery life, real-time updates to my phone. That night, after Daniela left for her shift, I tracked her to a condo building in Lincoln Park, the kind of place that cost more per month than I made in 2. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:15, Vince's car pulled into the building's underground garage. I sat there until almost midnight, watching the lights in what I assumed was their unit. Occasionally, shadows moved past the windows. At one point, I saw them clearly, silhouettes embracing, comfortable, familiar. The easy intimacy of people who had done this many times before. I took photographs, documented everything, built my case the way I'd been trained to build a case against any suspect. The difference was, this time, the suspects were the two people I'd trusted most in the world. I went back at 4 in the morning after I watched both of them leave. The building's security was a joke, a fire exit with a broken latch that hadn't been fixed in what looked like months. I was inside in under a minute. The condo was on the 3rd floor. The lock was a standard deadbolt. I had it open in 90 seconds. Inside, the air smelled like expensive cologne and something floral. Daniela's new perfume. The furniture was modern, sleek, the kind of stuff that looked like it came from a catalog. Not my taste. Not Daniela's either, or at least not the Daniela I thought I knew. I moved through the rooms quickly, photographing everything. In the bedroom closet, I found what I was looking for, a box hidden behind a row of suits. Inside, multiple driver's licenses, all with my name but Vince's face looking out from the photos. The makeup was subtle. A slightly different nose shape, a more pronounced jaw, contact lenses that matched my eye color, professional quality work. Financial records showing deposits into offshore accounts, amounts that matched the money skimmed from drug busts over the past 2 years, busts that Vince and I had worked together, and more files, older ones, dating back years, other women in other cities, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit, other identities he'd stolen. This wasn't his first operation. Megan was just the latest in a long line of victims. And a journal. Handwritten, the ink smeared in places like it had gotten wet. I recognized the handwriting from the messages on Megan's phone. He says his name is Ray Dalton. The first entry read, homicide detective, recently separated, lonely, sweet, in a damaged kind of way. I think he could be the one. I kept reading, my stomach turning. Something's off. The details don't match. I did some digging. The real Ray Dalton is still married. Lives in Edison Park, not Lincoln Park. Never been to the restaurants he took me to. I confronted him. He tried to talk his way out of it, but I had photos, proof. He's not who he says he is. He's been paying me to stay quiet. $5,000 a month, but I want more. I deserve more. The last entry was dated 3 days before her death. He says he'll pay Friday. I don't trust him. If something happens to me, this journal will explain everything. I'm meeting his wife tomorrow as insurance. She deserves to know what kind of man she married. Asterisk. Megan had met Daniela. She'd tried to turn my wife against the man she thought was her husband. But Daniela wasn't a victim. She was Vince's partner, and she'd killed Megan to protect their operation. I photographed every page of the journal, then put everything back exactly as I found it. When I got home, Daniela was already there, pretending to have just woken up. "Long night?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive." She nodded like this was perfectly normal and went to make coffee. I watched her move through our kitchen, the kitchen where we'd cooked 1,000 meals together, where we'd talked about our days, where I'd believed we were building a life. All of it was a lie. Lieutenant Derek Walsh had a face like a bulldog and a personality to match. Internal Affairs wasn't a posting you got for being friendly. It was where the department sent people who didn't mind being hated. "Detective Dalton," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Sit. I sat. We've received some disturbing allegations about your conduct. Multiple women have come forward claiming inappropriate relationships, affairs conducted using your position as a detective to gain their trust. I said nothing. Let him talk. 3 of these women have provided photographs, text messages, hotel records. He slid a folder across the desk. Care to explain? I opened the folder. The photos were the same ones from the anonymous message. Vince, in his disguise, wearing my identity like a costume. The text messages were fabrications, sent from burner phones to make it look like I'd been conducting affairs across the city. These aren't me. The women seemed to think otherwise. Then the women were deceived. Someone has been impersonating me. Walsh's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. We'll see. In the meantime, you're on administrative leave pending investigation. Badge and weapon, please. I unclipped my badge from my belt, placed my service weapon on his desk. 15 years of my life reduced to 2 small objects sliding across polished wood. Don't leave the city, Walsh said. We'll be in touch. I walked out of the precinct building and stood on the sidewalk, feeling the autumn wind cut through my jacket. No badge, no gun, no partner, no wife. Nothing but the truth, and no one willing to believe it. I needed allies. I needed someone inside the department who could dig without raising red flags. I pulled out my phone and called Angela Price. Angela and I had worked a case together 5 years ago, a serial rapist who'd been targeting women in Rogers Park. I'd put in the extra hours, followed leads off the books, helped her close it when everyone else had given up. She'd told me once that if I ever needed anything, she'd be there. Time to find out if she meant it. We met at a diner in Wicker Park, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Reagan administration. Angela slid into the seat across from me, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her eyes sharp and assessing. "You look like garbage," she said. "Thanks. I feel like it, too." "What's going on, Ray? The rumors flying around the precinct." "They're lies, all of it. I'm being framed." She studied me for a long moment. "By who?" I told her. "Everything. Vince, Daniela, Megan Carver, the shell company, the identity theft." She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "That's a lot." "I know how it sounds." "It sounds insane, but I've known you for 5 years and you've never lied to me." She pulled out a notepad. "What do you need?" Vince's background, deep dig. His ex-wife might be willing to talk, Caroline Callahan, and the DNA from under Megan's fingernails. I need to know if it matches anyone in the system. "You think Vince killed her?" "I think someone did, and I think Vince knows who." Angela nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can find, but Ray, if you're wrong about this..." "I'm not wrong." She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded again. "I'll be in touch." That night, I got another anonymous message. This time, it was a video. A man who looked exactly like me, Vince in his disguise, sitting across from Megan Carver at a restaurant. The audio was muffled but audible. "I need you to stop calling," the man said. "Or what?" Megan's voice was defiant. "You'll hurt me? You're a cop. You can't just make me disappear." The man leaned forward. "You'd be surprised what I can make happen." The video ended. There was a message attached. "I have a dead man's switch. If I'm arrested or harmed, everything goes to the Tribune, the Sun-Times, and CNN. You'll be the cop who murdered his mistress. Your career, your freedom, your life. Over. Asterisk. I watched the video 3 more times, studying every detail. The restaurant was familiar, a place called Trattoria Luna on the north side. I'd been there once, years ago, for a colleague's birthday dinner. The man in the video was wearing my watch, the one Daniela had given me for our 10th anniversary. I went to my dresser drawer. The watch wasn't there. I'd last seen it 2 months ago, around the time Vince had been in my house, according to the cell tower data. He'd taken it, used it as a prop in his performance. They'd thought of everything. I set up hidden cameras in my house that night, small ones, the kind you could buy online, easy to hide in bookshelves and lampshades. Then I waited for Daniela to come home from her shift. She was cheerful when she walked in, asked about my day, made dinner like everything was normal. After I pretended to fall asleep, she made a phone call. "He doesn't suspect anything," she said quietly, her voice drifting through the crack in the bedroom door. "We're clear." A pause. "I know we need to be careful." "I am being careful." Another pause. "I love you too." I lay in the dark, listening to my wife tell another man she loved him, and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not anger, not grief. Something older, harder. Determination. Angela called the next morning. "The DNA from under Megan's fingernails," she said. "It doesn't match Vince." I sat up straighter. "What?" "It's female. She scratched a woman before she died." "Did you run it through CODIS?" "No match to anyone in the system, but Ray," she hesitated. "There's something else. The autopsy showed Megan was pregnant, about 8 weeks. I'm running paternity now, should have results in a day or 2. Pregnant. The word hung in the air between us. If Vince is the father, then he had motive, and whoever killed her was trying to protect him. I thought about the journal entry, Megan meeting Daniela, thinking she could turn wife against husband. "I need you to run another sample, quietly." "Whose?" "My wife's." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long moment. "Ray, are you sure?" "I need to know." "Okay, get me something with her DNA on it. Hair, toothbrush, whatever. I'll run it off the books." I retrieved Daniela's hairbrush from the bathroom and drove it to Angela that afternoon. Then I went to meet Vince's ex-wife. Caroline Callahan had agreed to see me only after I'd explained who I was and what I suspected. She lived in Oak Park now, a small apartment above a bakery, as far from her old life as she could get without leaving the city entirely. She was thin, nervous, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "Thank you for meeting me," I said. "Do you mind if I record this? For my own protection." She hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, I want this on record anyway." I set my phone on the table between us, the red recording light blinking steadily. She didn't offer me coffee, didn't invite me to sit, just stood in the middle of her cramped living room with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. "You said you wanted to know about Vince." "Anything you can tell me, anything that might explain what he's capable of." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "What isn't he capable of? That's the better question." "When did you first notice something was wrong?" "From the beginning, probably. I just didn't want to see it." She moved to the window, staring out at the street below. He was charming, so charming, made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, but there were inconsistencies, stories that didn't add up, money that came from nowhere and disappeared just as fast. Did he ever impersonate anyone, use disguises? She turned to look at me, something flickering in her eyes. How did you know about that? I've seen the results. He practiced all the time, voices, mannerisms, the way people walked. He said it was a hobby, something he'd picked up as a kid to deal with. I don't know. He never really explained. She hugged herself tighter. But then I found the makeup, the prosthetics, professional quality stuff, the kind actors use. Did he ever mention who taught him, where he learned? There was a woman. Carolyn's voice dropped like she was afraid of being overheard. I never met her, never even saw a picture, but I heard them on the phone sometimes. She was cold, clinical, like everything they talked about was just logistics. Do you know her name? No, but Vince was different after those calls, more focused, more dangerous. She met my eyes. Whatever he's done, detective, she's part of it. Maybe the most important part. I thanked her and left, turning her words over in my mind. A woman, cold, clinical, someone who'd seen Vince's talent and honed it into something lethal. Daniela. My phone rang as I was getting into my car. Angela. The DNA matches, she said. Your wife's hair matches the skin cells under Megan Carver's fingernails. Ray, I'm sorry. Daniela killed her. This test, it's off the books. It won't hold up in court, and I could lose my badge if anyone finds out I ran it. But now you know. The official comparison will have to come later, through proper channels. But you know. And the paternity? Vince. He's the father. Another life he helped create and then helped destroy. I sat behind the wheel and stared at my windshield, seeing nothing. My wife had murdered a pregnant woman to protect an affair, to protect a scheme that would destroy my life. I thought about the 12 years we'd shared, the laughter, the quiet nights, the 1,000 small intimacies that make up a marriage, all of it built on a foundation of lies so deep I couldn't even see the bottom. Ray, Angela's voice was worried, are you okay? Yeah, I said, I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I wasn't anywhere close to fine. But I knew what I had to do. I found the file on Daniela's laptop the next night after she'd left for another shift with Vince. Her password took me longer to crack than her phone. She'd been careful about that too. But then I found a sticky note hidden in her desk drawer, the kind of careless mistake people make when they think they're untouchable. The date they'd first met, according to a calendar entry I found in the same drawer. The folder was labeled Contingency. Inside were documents that laid out their entire plan, a divorce attorney's contact information, my life insurance policy, $2 million with Daniela as sole beneficiary, and a timeline. Phase 1, establish Ray's pattern of infidelity. Phase 2, plant evidence of financial misconduct. Phase 3, anonymous tip to internal affairs. Phase 4, trial and conviction. Phase 5, Ray's suicide in custody, backup option. Phase 6, grieving widow receives insurance payout. Phase 7, disappear, Costa Rica, new names. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to frame me for murder, have me convicted, and inherit everything. And if that didn't work, they'd find a way to make sure I never made it to trial. I photographed every document, every email, every piece of evidence of their conspiracy. Then I started planning my counterattack. The problem was the dead man's switch. Vince had set up an automated system. If he didn't check in every 48 hours, everything would be released to the media. I'd be convicted in the court of public opinion before I ever saw the inside of a courtroom. I needed to neutralize the blackmail material, gather admissible evidence, expose them without becoming a victim. I couldn't go to my own department. I was under investigation, suspended with no credibility left. I couldn't confront Vince or Daniela directly. They'd trigger the switch immediately. But I could go over everyone's heads. The FBI's Chicago field office handled federal crimes, interstate fraud, identity theft, RICO violations. Everything Vince had done crossed state lines. Everything Daniela had done made her a co-conspirator. I created a burner email account at an internet cafe in Bridgeport and composed the most important message of my life to tips.fbi.chicago@fbi.gov. Subject: Evidence of interstate fraud and identity theft by Chicago police officer. I attached everything: the photos of the storage unit, the shell company records, the financial trail, everything except the DNA evidence connecting Daniela to the murder. That needed to be discovered legally. I knew none of what I'd gathered could be used directly in court. I'd obtained it illegally, and any defense attorney worth their retainer would have it thrown out in seconds. But that wasn't the point. The point was to give the FBI enough probable cause to get their own warrants, find the same evidence through legal channels. I was handing them a roadmap. They just had to follow it by the book. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I hit send. Now came the hardest part, the waiting. I went home and found Daniela in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner. "Hey," she said, not looking up, "how was your day?" "Terrible, actually." I slumped into a chair, letting my shoulders sag, my expression go slack. I think they're going to charge me. Walsh basically said as much." She turned, her face arranging itself into an expression of concern. "Oh, honey, I'm sure it'll work out." "I don't know if it will. The evidence they have, it looks bad, Daniela, really bad." "What kind of evidence?" "Photos, witnesses, financial stuff I can't explain." I let my voice crack. "I didn't do any of this, but I can't prove it. And if they charge me, if I go to prison, that won't happen." "It might, and if it does," I took a shaky breath, "maybe it would be better for everyone if I just ended it on my own terms." Her eyes widened, not with concern, with alarm. "Ray, you can't—" "Why not save you the embarrassment of a trial, save me the humiliation of prison?" I laughed bitterly. "At least you'd get the life insurance. That's something, right?" "You can't talk like that." Her voice was sharp now, urgent. "You need to fight this. We need to fight this together." "Do we? Do we really?" She stared at me for a long moment, something calculating moving behind her eyes. Then she crossed to where I sat and took my hands. "I love you," she said. "We'll get through this. I promise." Her hands were warm, her voice was soft, and every word was a lie. "You're right," I said. "I'm sorry. I'm just tired." "Why don't you go rest? I'll finish dinner." I nodded and walked to the bedroom, leaving the door cracked open just wide enough to hear her dial her phone. "He's talking about killing himself," she hissed into the receiver. "If he does that before we're ready, we lose everything." I smiled in the darkness. "Checkmate, sweetheart." The FBI moved faster than I expected. 2 days after I sent the tip, agents raided Vince's storage unit. I heard about it through Angela, who heard about it through the department grapevine. FBI showing up with warrants, carting out boxes of evidence, taking Vince's computer as part of an interstate fraud investigation. Vince must have heard about it too, because that same night, his dead man's switch activated. The emails went out. The photos, the videos, the fabricated evidence, all of it released to every major news outlet in Chicago. I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. Journalists requesting comment. Former colleagues sending shocked messages. My mother asking if I was okay. By noon, my face was on every channel. Chicago detective accused of multiple affairs, possible murder connection. The anchors spoke in grave tones about fallen heroes and broken trust. The photos played on loop Vince in his disguise, wearing my life like a costume. My reputation was destroyed, publicly, completely, irreversibly, but I was ready. I'd spent the previous night compiling my own evidence package. Everything I'd gathered over the past week, organized and documented with the precision of someone who'd built hundreds of cases over 15 years. Photos from the storage unit, the DNA match connecting Daniela to the murder, Carolyn Callahan's recorded testimony, Megan Carver's photographed journal, my own detailed timeline proving I'd been on documented duty during many of the alleged affairs. I called Natalie Brooks at the Chicago Tribune. She was skeptical at first. I was, after all, the subject of the biggest scandal in the city, but she agreed to meet. 3 hours later, she'd seen everything. This is... She shook her head, leafing through the photographs of Vince's disguise setup. This is incredible. It's also true. I'll need to verify everything. Check the timesheets, interview the witnesses, run it all down. I'll wait. She looked at me with something like respect. You really didn't do any of this. No, I didn't. And the people who did are about to be exposed. Her story went live 4 days later. She'd worked around the clock to verify every detail, cross-referencing timesheets, interviewing sources, consulting experts on prosthetics and identity fraud. The real story detective, framed by partner and wife in identity theft murder scheme. It was thorough, devastating, everything I'd given her, plus additional verification she'd done independently, expert analysis of the prosthetics, financial forensics, interviews with the other women Vince had scammed. By noon, the narrative had shifted completely. I wasn't the villain anymore, I was the victim, and Vince and Daniela were trapped. The FBI arrested Vince at his apartment. I wasn't there for it, but Angela told me later. He tried to bargain, tried to leverage his insurance, but it had already been discredited. There was nothing left to threaten with. They picked up Daniela at the hospital. She was in the middle of her shift, her real shift for once, when the agents walked in. She tried to claim coercion. Vince made her do it. She was afraid for her life. But I had the recordings. Every phone call, every whispered conversation, every moment of calculated cruelty captured by the cameras I'd hidden in our home. She wasn't a victim. She was a monster wearing a wife's face. During interrogation, they turned on each other almost immediately. Vince said Daniela was the mastermind. She'd approached him, seduced him, shown him how to use his talent for impersonation to make real money. She'd specifically chosen me as a target because I was too honest to suspect anything. Daniela said Vince was the mastermind. He'd manipulated her, isolated her from her husband, made her believe she had no choice. She'd only killed Megan in self-defense when the blackmailer threatened to expose them both. Neither version was true. Neither version mattered. The evidence spoke for itself. 3 months after my suspension, I stood in Captain Webb's office and watched her slide my badge across her desk. I owe you an apology, she said. The department owes you an apology. You didn't know. I should have. You've been one of my best detectives for years. I should have trusted that. I picked up the badge. It felt heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just more aware of its weight. I'm requesting a transfer, I said. Cold cases. She raised an eyebrow. You're cleared for active duty. The Carver case made you a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I just want to do my job, quietly, without partners. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. If that's what you want. It is. Vince's trial took 4 months. Identity theft, fraud, accessory to murder, evidence tampering. The prosecution laid out nearly a decade of schemes. Women deceived across multiple states, money stolen, lives ruined, all while he wore a badge and pretended to protect the city. The FBI had traced his operations back to Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit. Megan Carver was just the latest victim in a pattern that stretched back years. He got 25 years federal. Daniela's trial was shorter. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal, second-degree murder instead of first, in exchange for testimony against Vince. It didn't save her. 18 years, state. I didn't attend either trial. I didn't need to. The verdicts were just formality. The real justice had already happened. In the moment, they were exposed, in the destruction of the lives they'd tried so hard to build on top of mine. The divorce was simple. Assets frozen due to criminal proceedings. Nothing to divide. I didn't want the house, didn't want the memories. Just a clean break and a signature on a piece of paper that made official what had been true for a long time. I never spoke to Daniela again. The FBI's investigation had uncovered 6 other women Vince had scammed using stolen identities. Scattered across the Midwest, each one believing she'd had a relationship with a man who never existed. After the trials, the Bureau shared their contact information with me. I reached out to them individually, explained what had happened, apologized for something that wasn't my fault but felt like my responsibility anyway. 3 of them thanked me. 2 hung up immediately. 1 cried for 20 minutes while I sat on the other end of the line saying nothing, just being there. On a cold Sunday in November, I visited Megan Carver's grave, Oakwood Cemetery out on the south side. Her headstone was simple, just her name and the dates. She'd been a blackmailer, a schemer, someone who'd seen an opportunity and tried to exploit it, but she'd also been murdered by people who were supposed to uphold the law. She'd been pregnant with a child who would never be born. She'd been, in her own way, another victim of the same machine that had nearly destroyed me. I left flowers on her grave. Didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. My new apartment was in Ukrainian Village. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, no photographs on the walls. I'd kept almost nothing from my old life, just my clothes, my books, and the files from cases I'd worked over the years. And the cold case I opened on my first day in my new assignment. Patricia Kowalski, 32 years old, found strangled in her apartment in 1987. No suspects, no leads, no justice. I spread the file across my desk and started reading. The police reports were yellowed with age. The photographs faded, the witness statements typed on machines that probably belonged in a museum now, but the victim was still there. Still waiting. I picked up my pen and began,